All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're taking a deep dive into something that I think you're really going to find fascinating. Extroversion.
Hmm.
We all think we know what it means, right? But after combing through all this research from Personality NFT, I'm realizing there's a whole lot more to it. Get ready to have your mind blown because we're about to uncover the hidden layers of extroversion. And who knows, you might even learn a thing or two about yourself along the way.
You hit the nail on the head when you say there are hidden layers. Because one of the biggest myths we need to bust right off the bat is that extroversion is this black and white thing. You're either an extrovert or you're not. But personality NFT really emphasizes that it's not that simple.
Yeah, for sure. Like, what about those people who seem to float between the two? Like, they love a good party, but then they also need their solo time. Are they just, like, confused?
Not at all. That's where this whole concept of ambiversion comes in. And honestly, it's way more common than you might think.
Ah.
Oh yeah, personality NFT actually points out that a whopping 68% of people identify as ambiverts.
So that means most of us are comfortable in both social and solo situations. Never thought about it like that. But, okay, let's focus on those who do lean more heavily towards extroversion. What's actually going on beneath the surface for them?
Well, according to Personality NFT, extroversion isn't just one big blob of personality traits. They break it down into 6 distinct facets.
6. Okay, this is already getting interesting. This is starting to sound way less like loves to party and more like a complex puzzle.
It really is, and each piece of that puzzle is essential to understanding the whole picture.
Okay, so let's hear it. What are these 6 mysterious facets?
All right, so first up, we have warmth. This is all about that ability to project kindness and positive emotions. You know those people who just have this natural way of making you feel comfortable and welcome?
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's warmth in action.
Makes sense.
Then you've got gregariousness, which is more of what we traditionally think of when we picture an extrovert. Someone who thrives in social situations, loves meeting new people, and actively seeks out those interactions.
Okay, the classic social butterfly type.
Exactly. Then we have assertiveness, which I think is often misunderstood. It's not about being pushy or aggressive, but more about having that confidence to express your opinions and needs directly.
So someone who's assertive might be a natural leader or good at negotiating, right?
Exactly. They know their worth, and they aren't afraid to communicate it effectively.
Gotcha.
The fourth facet is activity level, and this one is pretty straightforward. Think of people who are always on the go, buzzing with energy, and just love to stay active.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together. So we've got warmth, gregariousness, assertiveness, and activity level.
That's right. Now buckle up, because number 5 is excitement seeking. These are the thrill seekers, the adrenaline junkies, the ones who are always pushing their boundaries and craving novelty.
Oh, interesting. So not all extroverts are content with just being the life of the party. Some of them might be off climbing mountains or starting their own businesses, huh?
Precisely. And last but not least, we have positive emotions. This is all about experiencing those feelings of joy, happiness, and optimism frequently. It's that sunny disposition, that tendency to see the world through a positive lens.
Got it. So it's not just about being outgoing. It's this whole constellation of traits. I'm already seeing extroversion in a whole new light.
And we're just scratching the surface, because here's the really cool part. Personality NFT doesn't stop at just defining these facets. They delve into the science behind it all.
Oh, really? So, like, you're telling me there's a biological reason why some people are naturally more extroverted than others?
Exactly. It's not just some random personality quirk. There's a real biological basis for these differences.
Mind blown.
For instance, did you know that genetics play a huge role in our extroversion levels?
How big are we talking?
Studies show that up to 50% of our extroversion is actually inherited.
Wow, 50%. Nature versus nurture is playing out right there in our personalities.
You got it.
Okay, but what about the other 50%? Is that where our environment and experiences come into play?
Absolutely. Our upbringing, our social interactions, the culture we're raised in, all those things contribute as well. But that biological foundation is pretty incredible to think about.
Yeah, it really is. I'm starting to realize how much I took for granted about personality.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just this abstract concept. There's actual science behind it.
And the more we learn about that science, the better we can understand ourselves and the people around us.
I totally agree. But I got to be honest, all this talk about genetics and biology kind of makes my head spin.
Oh, I get it. It can be a little overwhelming, especially if you're not a scientist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is there a way to explain it in, like, simple terms?
Of course. Let's
All
talk
right.
about dopamine for a second. You know that good feeling you get when you achieve a goal or do something you enjoy?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in our brain's reward system. And research has shown that extroverts' brains release more dopamine in response to those rewarding experiences.
So like they get a bigger happy buzz from things like social interaction or trying new things.
You got it. And this heightened dopamine response is likely linked to structural differences in their brains as well. Certain areas associated with reward processing are just more active in extroverts.
Whoa. So it's not just a matter of how they perceive the world.
Yeah.
Their brains are actually wired differently.
Exactly.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. So if extroverts are getting this surge of dopamine from socializing and trying new things, it makes total sense why they gravitate towards those experiences.
You're starting to see the bigger picture.
I am. But I think it's important to remember that not all extroverts are created equal, right? I mean, we can't just lump them all into one stereotype.
Absolutely not. Remember those 6 facets we talked about? They're essential for understanding the nuances within extroversion.
Yeah, like someone who's high in warmth might be super social, but they're not doing it just for the attention. They genuinely care about connecting with people.
Exactly.
And someone who's high in assertiveness might be comfortable speaking up, but it doesn't mean they're trying to steamroll over everyone else. It's about finding that balance between expressing yourself and being respectful of others.
You're getting it.
So maybe we need to ditch those stereotypes and look at the individual facets to really understand how someone's extroversion plays out.
I couldn't agree more. It's like appreciating different flavors of ice cream. Not everyone who loves ice cream is going to want the same flavor every time, right?
Good point. So extroversion is just as diverse. Okay, so we've covered the basics of extroversion and even touched on the brain science behind it. But now I'm curious about how all of this plays into an extrovert's relationships. Personality NFT mentioned that they thrive on social interaction. But does that automatically equal relationship success?
That's a great question, and it's actually a bit more complicated than it seems at first glance. While social interaction is definitely essential for extroverts, it's not a guaranteed recipe for happy and healthy relationships.
Right, because there's a lot more to a successful relationship than just enjoying being around people.
Exactly. And this is where those 6 facets come back into play.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Someone who's high in excitement seeking might approach relationships very differently from someone who's high in warmth.
For sure. Like the excitement seeker might be all about spontaneity and adventure, while the one who's high in warmth might prioritize those deep, meaningful conversations and that emotional connection.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Plus, we can't forget that successful relationships rely on a whole host of other factors besides just personality. Communication, empathy, compromise, those are all key ingredients no matter where you fall on the extroversion spectrum.
So, even though extroverts might naturally gravitate towards social connection, building strong and lasting relationships still takes effort, and those all-important interpersonal skills.
Absolutely.
This conversation is blowing my mind wide open. We've gone from simple definitions to brain chemistry to relationship dynamics. And I feel like we're just getting started.
We are just scratching the surface. There's so much more to unpack, especially when we look at how extroversion influences our career choices and leadership styles. But I think for now, we should give our listeners a chance to process all this incredible info.
Good point. It's like we've opened Pandora's box of extroversion. And there's a whole universe of knowledge just waiting to be explored.
And we'll be right here to guide you through it, so stay tuned. Okay, so remember how we were just talking about how extroversion impacts relationships?
Yeah, totally. All those different facets coming into play, and how it's not always a straight shot to relationship bliss just because you're an extrovert.
Right. Well, it got me thinking about how we often make assumptions about careers and personality types, too. Like, you always hear people say that salespeople have to be extroverts to be successful.
Oh, for sure. It's almost like a cliche at this point.
Yeah.
But is there any truth to that?
Well, Personality NFT does point out that a lot of the top jobs for extroverts tend to be in areas where those interpersonal skills are highly valued. Things like sales, law, event planning, jobs where you're constantly interacting with people.
So maybe those stereotypes aren't completely unfounded.
Right, but here's the thing. It's not a hard and fast rule. Remember those 6 facets we talked about?
Yeah, warmth, gregariousness, all those good things.
Exactly. So even someone who might identify as more introverted could still thrive in a client-facing role if they're high in warmth, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just about being the loudest person in the room. It's about those specific qualities that allow you to connect with people authentically.
Exactly.
And honestly, let's not forget that skills can be learned and developed. No matter what your natural personality tendencies might be, I mean, with the right training and dedication, anyone can learn to be more effective in those interpersonal situations.
100%.
So it's not about trying to fit yourself into some predetermined box. It's about figuring out your strengths and working with them.
I like that. Figuring out your strengths and working with them. And speaking of strengths, this whole conversation got me thinking about leadership. How does extroversion play into different leadership styles?
Ooh, good question. I feel like we often think of extroverts as natural leaders, right? With their confidence and their ability to, rally people around a cause.
Right. And there is definitely some truth to that. Those traits we discussed, like assertiveness, gregariousness, having that positive energy, those can be super valuable when it comes to motivating and guiding a team.
But are there any downsides? I mean, I feel like no personality trait is perfect.
You're absolutely right. Even strengths can have their shadow sides.
Interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, like sometimes an extrovert's assertiveness can come across as, I don't know, maybe a little too dominant. And that can make it difficult for them to really listen to and value feedback from others.
Yeah. Like anything else, it's all about balance, right?
Exactly. The best leaders, regardless of their personality, are the ones who can leverage their strengths while also being aware of those potential blind spots. It's about developing a well-rounded skill set that includes things like active listening, empathy, and collaboration.
I love that. So it's not about being an extrovert or an introvert. It's about being a good leader, period.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a skill that can be cultivated, and personality is just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I feel like we're going way beyond those surface-level assumptions about extroversion.
We're getting to the good stuff.
And speaking of good stuff, there's one more big question I want to tackle. Does being an extrovert actually lead to a happier, more fulfilling life?
The age-old question. And it's one that Personality NFT delves into as well.
As was the verdict.
Well, it's not quite as simple as saying, yes, extroverts are happier. It's way more nuanced than that. Research does suggest that they tend to report higher levels of life satisfaction. But, correlation doesn't equal causation, right?
Right. There could be other factors at play.
Exactly. Like, extroverts often have larger social networks, which we know can be a huge source of support and a sense of belonging. Plus, they're more likely to engage in those activities that trigger those dopamine responses we were talking about.
That makes sense.
But of course, it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Even extroverts have to deal with challenges and negative emotions.
Of course. No one's immune to life's ups and downs, personality aside. And there's even some research suggesting that extroverts might be a bit more prone to certain risky behaviors, maybe because they're seeking out those intense experiences.
So it's all about finding that balance again, right?
You got it. Extroversion can bring a lot of joy and fulfillment, but it's important to be aware of those potential pitfalls and develop those healthy coping mechanisms.
Totally agree. This whole conversation has been so eye-opening.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I am. And it brings up another question that's been on my mind. Can you actually change your level of extroversion?
Oh, that's a good one.
Like, is it possible for someone who's naturally more introverted to become more extroverted or vice versa? What does Personality NFT say about that?
It's a fascinating topic. And it's not about completely transforming your personality. Like, our core tendencies tend to be fairly stable throughout our lives.
Okay, so we're not talking about a complete personality makeover.
Not exactly, but there is room for flexibility. It's kind of like any other skill, With practice and intention, you can learn to stretch those boundaries and become more comfortable in situations that might have felt challenging before.
So we're not totally stuck with whatever hand we're dealt. There's hope for those of us who might want to tweak our extroversion levels a bit.
Absolutely. Personality NFT actually suggests a few techniques that can help enhance or moderate different aspects of our extroversion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm all ears. Let's hear it.
One technique is practicing those core social skills we've been talking about. It could be as simple as starting conversations with strangers, joining a club or group activity, even just practicing your small talk skills.
Okay, so exposure and repetition. The more you put yourself out there, the easier it becomes.
That's the idea. And remember, it's not about trying to become a social butterfly overnight. Small steps, realistic goals, celebrating those little wins along the way.
I like that. What about those who are looking to maybe dial down their extroversion a bit? Any advice for them?
Absolutely. Even extroverts need downtime to recharge and process. Learning to set boundaries around social interactions, scheduling solo time, practicing mindfulness, those can all be super helpful.
It's like being mindful of your social battery and making sure you don't drain it completely.
Exactly. And for some extroverts, it might be about shifting their focus from quantity to quality of interactions. So instead of trying to be the life of every party, maybe they prioritize those deep conversations with close friends or connecting with people who share their interests.
Okay, so it's all about finding that sweet spot where you feel energized and engaged, but not overwhelmed.
You nailed it.
This is making so much sense. It's not about forcing yourself to fit into some predefined mold. It's about understanding your own needs and preferences and finding ways to navigate the world authentically.
And ultimately, I think that's what this journey of understanding extroversion is all about.
I agree.
It's not about labeling yourself or anyone else. It's about recognizing that we all have our own unique blend of traits and preferences and experiences. And the key is to honor those differences while striving to live our best, most authentic lives.
Beautifully said.
So, after all of this, that big question still lingers.
Oh, yeah. Which facet of extroversion has the biggest impact on overall happiness?
Right. We've talked about warmth, gregariousness, positive emotions. Which one do you think takes the cake?
Honestly, it's such a tough choice. I mean, each one seems to contribute something so valuable. But if I had to pick, I think I'm still leaning towards warmth. Those genuine connections, the ability to make others feel good, it just seems like a recipe for a happy and fulfilling life.
I see where you're coming from. It's true that warmth creates this ripple effect of positivity. It's not just about the extrovert's own happiness, it's about the impact they have on the people around them.
And that brings us joy.
Right, absolutely. But then again, gregariousness has its perks too. That feeling of being surrounded by people, sharing experiences, laughing together, those are all such important parts of a happy life.
No doubt about it.
And don't forget about positive emotions. If you're naturally inclined towards optimism and joy, that's going to have a huge impact on how you experience life.
It's like having a superpower almost.
Yeah, it can really help you navigate those inevitable challenges and setbacks.
I love how this deep dive has taken us on such an unexpected journey. We started with extroversion, and now we're exploring the very essence of happiness and human connection.
And that's the beauty of it. It's all connected.
So maybe there isn't one definitive answer to that question. Maybe it's about recognizing the unique contributions of each facet and finding a balance that works for you.
I think you're absolutely right. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to happiness.
Well said. This has been such an enlightening conversation.
Me too.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on extroversion. It's not just a label. It's this dynamic interplay of biology, behavior, and perception.
And it shapes so much of our lives, both personally and professionally.
Couldn't agree more.
Before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. Now that you've explored all these different facets of extroversion, which ones resonate most with you? Which facet do you see most strongly in yourself? And how can you use that knowledge to create a life that feels truly authentic and aligned with who you are?
Those are powerful questions. I hope our listeners take some time to really reflect on those. This has been another fantastic deep dive, and we can't wait to continue exploring with you all in the future. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those conversations flowing.